general election mode. The first voting in the general election actually begins just in 2 weeks from now, as certain states get underway on September 21st, to be exact. And the polling still shows that this race is for the House of Representatives is very, very close. It's practically even in terms of whether or not the Democrats can win enough seats to take over the House of Representatives. The Senate is much, much harder for them to make inroads into. As a matter of fact, likely Republican and pro-life senators will pick up seats, and by all means, they can certainly also hold on to control of the House of Representatives, which, as we will discuss during this time tonight, is so, so important for the progress of pro-life legislation and for the progress of the agenda of the American people in many ways. I'm joined by Janet Marana, our Executive Director. Janet, how are you? And are you excited as we get into this final phase of the elections?
Oh, yes, very excited, Father. And now is when it's just a question of which team gets more people to the polls. That's what right. The part we're in now, sprint to the finish. And it is two teams. It's the Democrats and us. And we've got to gin up our base and get them out to the polls to vote, and we will win.
Yes, exactly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pray, and we're going to say here the election prayer, which we will talk more about as a resource for all of you to use. And then we are going to let Krista Childs, who's from our Washington, D.C. office and who handles the give a couple of instructions to those that are following us on the Webcast website. Of course, many others are following us on Facebook Live, on my Facebook page. And so for them, they simply need to see what is there on the screen. But we're going to cover a lot of important points here and give you some very practical tools to use to influence this election, and also give you some perspective, give you some numbers, give you some ideas to going into this election of some of the dynamics that are going on. Okay, so we have a human lives begin, and not one moment later. Lord, we rejoice today that we are citizens of your kingdom. May that make us all the more committed to be faithful citizens on earth. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, Janet, just before we even go to Krista, this prayer, this is a key resource for people to use in this election. You want to tell them a little bit more about how they can do that?
Sure, Father. Well, first of all, you can request from us, excuse me, as many copies as you'd like. Some churches have taped it inside their hymnals, and at the end of every Mass, they say the prayer together. You can also distribute it to your prayer groups, your Bible study groups, wherever you have your circle of influence, and at the end of a meeting, like for the Knights of Columbus or any other group you belong to, this prayer could be said, because it really raises everyone's awareness about praying for the results of this election. The reason why we had such a great election in 2016 was because of the prayers. And so we have to double our prayer efforts now with this midterm election, because so much is still at stake.
You know, it really was the power of prayer. And, you know, you can be an apostle of this prayer campaign. We just had, if you go to Life News, for your pro-life news, as so many people do, Steve Ertelt, lifenews.com. Janet, we have up there right now on the top banner of that pro-life news website, the banner that says, join the National Prayer Campaign for the elections of 2018. And it goes to the page with the prayer we just said, electionprayer.com. You can find it there in Spanish as well as in English. You can download a copy of it. And you also can sign up to be a co-sponsor. You as a parish, as an organization, or if you're an individual, there's a box to click that says, you know what, I'm participating in this prayer campaign. Not only by saying the prayer each day, but by getting many other people to do so in some of the ways that Janet just described. And if groups or parishes have questions as to whether or not it is legally permissible to distribute a prayer like this, Janet, tell them about the letter that is right there at that same page. In fact, the page is again election. I'm thinking about the legal letter of the. I'm ahead of myself. We're going to talk about another key resource in a moment, the comparison piece of the party positions, and for that one we have a legal letter. But for this, the prayer, electionprayer.com is the website. So go there and sign up. Let us know that you want to be an apostle of this particular campaign, and you can reach so many people. You know, if you get people praying about the election, you've got them thinking about it. If you get them thinking about it, you get them talking about it. You get them talking about it, you can get them to do something about it. Okay, so let's go to Krista. Now, Krista, many people are following on the Webcast interface, the special event page. Tell them a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you, Father. Good evening, everyone. First of all, this webcast is being recorded, so you will be able to listen to it again if you would like, or pass the recording on to others you know. You can come back to this very same event page after the event to get the replay information. And there are links on that page that Father Frank will be referring to during the webcast, and you're encouraged to follow along with those. And also, there's a question and answer box. We really encourage you to please submit your questions, and we'll get to as many as possible. You just submit them by scrolling all the way to the bottom of the event page and filling out the question and answer section that you see there. So thank you very much.
All right, that's excellent. And the web links, there's these key web links we're going to talk about in a moment. And one of them, friends, we'll mention right now. And Janet, if you want to say an extra word about this too, it is donate, prolifedonation.org. Donate. You know, the summers we just got through the summertime, and the summers are always very, very low in donations, and we've really poured ourselves out for the confirmation process of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. We're confident it'll be confirmed within the next few weeks. And this really has depleted a lot of our resources, hasn't it, Janet? So people need to give us an extra dose, an extra push as we go into this final phase of the election season. Janet, are you there?
Yes, Father. And, you know, a lot of the election materials that we're making available to everyone, we have, you know, printed lots and lots of materials, but we have printed bills to pay. And so, therefore, if you can help donate so that we can make all these materials available for people over the next few weeks throughout the country, we would greatly appreciate it, because our printers are waiting to be paid. So if you can make a donation, it would greatly, greatly help us.
ProLifeDonation.org, and there's a link there on the webcast page, and just ProLifeDonation.org is pretty easy to remember for everybody else. Okay, now, a few points to put this election into perspective. As we mentioned earlier, the election of 2 years ago that put President Trump into office was a miraculous and historically unprecedented election. Truly amazing. To think back to how you felt that night, it was really, really something. And what we have to do, a lot of voters came out of the woodwork. They came out, and because the models of polling are based on projections of who they expect to be likely voters, the polling did not see ahead of time these people that came out and that were touched and motivated by President Trump, awakened to a whole movement, and the election therefore was such a surprise. All these people who came out to vote for President Trump, we need to go back and get them to come back out again. Now, midterm elections are characteristically lower in voter turnout than the presidential races. But although President Trump's name is not on the ballot in this particular election, the fact of the matter is this election, this midterm election, the theme of this election is anti-Trump versus pro-Trump. His name might not be on the ballot, but his presidency is. His name might not be on the ballot, but his policies are. His name may not be on the ballot, but brothers and sisters, what's at stake here is that the things that motivated so many to vote for him 2 years ago, whether the economy, progress with health care, progress against unemployment, or the most fundamental issue, the right to life itself, the protection of the unborn, the defunding of Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, whatever it was, the courts, the appointment of justices to the Supreme Court and judges to all the other federal courts, whatever it was that motivated people to vote for him and for other Republicans in 2016, they need to realize one thing. If they don't get out and vote this time, and vote the same way, their vote back in 2016 will have been wasted, will have been lost. Not that there hasn't been great progress between then and now. There has been. And we're going to review what some of that progress is. But the point is, we won't be able to continue to make progress if the president is sitting there in the White House with pen in hand, ready to sign legislation that's going to take money away from Planned Parenthood, ready to sign legislation that's going to protect the unborn, continuing to do the work of the American people to make the economy as strong as it is now and to put more money into people's hands in their paychecks. We can't have him sitting there in the White House willing and ready to do these things, and the proper bills are never brought to him by a Congress that's tied up under Democrat control, and all they'll be doing is talking 24/7 about impeachment. Is that what we really want? For the work of the American people to grind to a halt, the progress we've been making just to stop and to pause and to go into limbo, while a bunch of Trump-hating Democrats just carry on a 24/7 circus in the United States Congress. Now, Janet, I don't know how many of our viewers saw the hearings of Brett Kavanaugh in this past week. But, you know, the point I'm making right now about how the Congress would turn into a circus if these more of these Democrats got elected really was put on full display for us, wasn't it, in the United States Senate, where even though they are in the minority, they put on quite a show, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. And, well, first of all, Father, so many of them said at the outset, oh, we're not going to vote for him anyway. Okay, so if you've made up a decision before he's even opened his mouth at any of these hearings, and I'm not voting for him anyway, then why do you need to see documents? I mean,
right.
The whole thing, basically, with some of these Democrats was a real sham.
It was a
the way they
farce.
conducted themselves.
It
and
really
then
was.
they paid protesters to carry on like screaming memes that the police had to take them out of the hearing rooms.
Idiots.
I mean, this is a disgrace. Is this the kind of behavior we want to encourage our American citizens? This is not about First Amendment. This is about being rude and no respect for the legislative body that we have there and this hearing room. So, I mean, really, it was a disgrace the way they conducted themselves this week.
Yeah, and I want you, friends, to understand, we're saying this right now because it's a strategic dynamic for the midterm elections. Here's what I mean. Show your friends, your family, your coworkers, your fellow parishioners, show them the extremism of the other side. Let it be on full display. We want it to be on full display. Go back and grab the videos from YouTube and let people see, look how these people conduct themselves, look at the ridiculous arguments that they make, and let people be turned off, especially those who are moderates, those who are independents. Let them be turned off by the extremism of the left so that they'll tend to vote for the more conservative candidates. This is actually a good opportunity that we have. Another aspect of this, of course, if you think about the House of Representatives now, they'll be tied up with all kinds of nonsense about impeachment. And it's not because of anything that the president has done. It's because they still can't figure out why they lost the 2016 election, and they want to relitigate that election. And secondly, the progress that we have made, and here's where I want to show you a couple of tools you can use. Again, we want to make this, we want to give you some clear ideas here, but we want to make this very practical in terms of tools you can use, that you can print, that you can hand out, that you can show to others, that you can study yourself. On the web, if you're on the Webcast event page, go to prolifevote.com. If you're following on Facebook, you'll see this projected onto the screen. Prolifevote.com is our main voting guide page. There's much more here than we have time to go into tonight. We want to show you the page and urge you, take the time. We're doing in these seminars is basically giving you some arrows pointing in the direction of a wealth of information. That part one is taking part in this seminar. Part two is take time yourself with this website. You won't be sorry. You'll see a lot of great things. But one of the things I want to point out to you right now on when you click on prolifevote.com, scroll down, and you will see not too far from the top a picture of the president and a link that says President Trump's pro-life accomplishments. Now, why? Again, if he's not the one who's on the ballot, why are we doing this? Again, because this is an election about anti-Trump versus pro-Trump. It really is. And it's an election about, are we going to give the president more leverage, more power, more ability to carry out the kinds of policies and the kinds of progress that motivated people to vote for him in the first place. And it is only if we understand the progress that has been made, and this is only on one key issue, which is the fundamental issue, the right to life, because if we don't have life, we don't have anything. It's the most fundamental right and the condition for all our other rights. Well, then we want to show the progress he's made, because so many of you, in fact, let me give you a statistic. When voters were asked after the 2016 election whether abortion influenced their vote, 49% said yes, it did. And of that 49%, fully 31% voted for pro-life candidates, and only 18% voted for the pro-abortion candidates. 31% for pro-life, 18% for pro-abortion. That's a 13-point spread. And, you know, a lot of elections, most elections, are won by way, way less than 13%. So, in other words, the position one takes on abortion is a winning position, and therefore it's a winning position for the candidates to speak about it, and it's a winning position for you and me to speak about it. Having said that, you want to show people what President Trump's pro-life accomplishments are, so that you can realize, you know, your vote in 2016 paid off, and now your vote in 2018 will pay off again if you give him more leverage to do what he has to do. Now, Janet, let's talk about some of the things he wants to do, he's ready to do, building on the things he's already done. One of the big things is about the funding of the abortion industry. Even people who say that they're in favor of legal abortion, they don't want to pay for somebody else's abortion. And so what has happened is that although remember, the funding of the abortion industry, and it's more effective to say the funding of the abortion industry or the abortion business than it is to say the funding of Planned Parenthood, because a lot of people in the public, they have a positive idea of Planned Parenthood, but they have a negative idea of abortion itself and the abortion business, and many people don't even know Planned Parenthood is the biggest abortion business. So if you say, okay, the funding of the abortion business, that's not something you and I want to do. Well, the president doesn't want us to have to do that either. And so he wants to turn off the flow of money into Planned Parenthood, except it's not just one faucet. It's many, many different faucets coming in different ways, and different government programs and different levers of funding, if you will, and they're controlled in different ways. Some of them are under the control directly of the president. Others are under the control only of the Congress. And Janet, what we've seen, of course, is that the House of Representatives, for those things that are under the control of the Congress, such as the Medicaid stream of funding, which is the biggest stream of funding to Planned Parenthood, the House of Representatives did, in fact, vote to defund Planned Parenthood multiple times. The harder hill to climb is the Senate. And it's not that they're for a lack of commitment as much as it is for a lack of numbers, because the Senate rules give the minority party, even an individual senator, a lot of power to block efforts of the majority, and that came into play here. The fact is that in order to get anything done, you really need 60 votes, not just a simple majority. You need 60 reliable pro-life votes, and if some of your people are not reliable, you need even more than 60. So the point is that you have to have an understanding here that it's a numbers game. You know, the level of commitment of a pro-life legislator does not give him or her any more than one vote when it comes to a pro-life measure that they have to vote on. Janet, can you imagine if the more motivated a person was, the more votes they got? Let's say, I'm going to cast 4 votes for this particular legislation because I'm a more motivated pro-life legislator. It doesn't work that way, does it? They each get 1 vote. So it really is a numbers game, as you mentioned earlier.
That's right, Father. And, the other thing you should mention is the polls that have been coming out and polling, et cetera, because one piece of advice is basically turn off the TV and don't listen to the mostly dominated left media, because they make it sound like the Democrats have a sweep here. But just remember how Hillary thought she was winning. They were so sure she was winning. And the end result was she didn't win. No, and this might be the same thing. So
it's simply not true.
We're going to do this. We can do this. But all of us have to get every person we know, everyone on your Christmas card list, your circle of influence. You've got to encourage them all to get out and vote.
Yeah, it's simply not true. This picture they want to paint. Remember, this is psychological warfare. The battle is in the mind of the enemy. The enemy always wants his enemy to think that he's not winning. The battle is in the mind of the enemy. The media is simply a political machine for the Democratic Party, and have no doubt about it. We're going to talk more about the properly reading the polls in just a moment. But understand, going back to the funding of the abortion industry, understand the progress that has already been made. The Medicaid funding is one stream, but President Trump has acted to stop the funding of the abortion industry through Title X. He turned off that faucet. That was under his executive power to do, and he did it. He stopped the funding of the abortion industry on the state level by returning to the states something that President Obama had taken away from them, which is the right to redirect money away from abortion performing or abortion referring agencies to healthcare centers that do not kill babies by abortion. He did that. And then he also took money away from the abortion industry on the international level, where he not only reinstated the Mexico City policy, which stops money from going to agencies that perform or promote abortion overseas. He not only reinstituted it, he increased it. And whereas before it was keeping about $500 million away from the abortion industry, now it's keeping away $8.8 billion from the abortion industry. So, people shouldn't say, they promised to defund the Planned Parenthood and they didn't do it. They did do it, and now they need more. And that's why this election it's like a part 2 to the 2016 election. It's like an exclamation point on what we already did. So go back and find the voters in your community, in your family, in your place of work, in your parish, who voted for President Trump. Show them this list of his pro-life accomplishments, and tell them that now is part two. You don't want your vote back then to be wasted. Now is part two. Let's do it. Let's add an exclamation point to the victory that we already had. Many other pro-life accomplishments. He appointed so many people in the administration who are pro-life, starting, of course, with this wonderful vice president that we have, Mike Pence. He put all kinds of people in other positions who have done all kinds of things. Read the list of the 10 accomplishments. And of course, accomplishment number one, towering above all the rest, the biggest thing that the president did for the pro-life movement was that he kept Hillary Clinton out of the White House. Now, we also see, of course, what he did with the courts, and this leads us into another link on the page. If you go back to the event page of tonight's webcast, underneath that donation link, and again, we want to remind you to, even while you're with us tonight, send us a donation so we can help to bring this over the finish line with all these elections. But the third of the links there under the section called Call Handouts and Links is called Courts and Legislation. And these are the diagrams I like to show people about how a president shifts the courts. Now, this confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, which is going to take place, is a really big plus heading into this election, because it reminds people in a very real way, hey, the Supreme Court, this is a motivating factor. And most voters in the 2016 election were motivated by the Supreme Court. And there was an actual vacancy at that time, and just as there's an actual vacancy now that's being filled. And most of those motivated by the Supreme Court, just like most of those motivated by abortion, voted pro-life. And so we see now it happening now for the second time that one of President Trump's appointments is being confirmed to the Supreme Court. This is excellent. But he's also appointing all kinds of judges to the other courts. The other federal courts at the appeals level and at the district level are also appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. Now, if you look at the page that shows up when you click that third link on our event page tonight, call about the courts, you see a map of the United States, which has a lot of red in it. Those were the makeups of the federal courts of appeals in 2009, after 8 years of George W. Bush making federal court appointments. The red indicates on the map, and then below on the bars, the different courts of appeals and the different circuits in the United States. And the red shows that the majority of those courts were under the control of Republican-appointed judges who then therefore tend to vote pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-family, etc. And then 8 years later, after 8 years of President Obama, look at the shift. Most of the country is blue, indicating that most of the federal courts were now under the control of Democrat-appointed judges. Right now, President Trump has had more success than any other president at this point in his presidency of turning that back the other way and getting his kind of appointments confirmed by the Senate to the courts. And that's why, of course, the Senate needs to remain under Republican control so that he can continue to appoint these kinds of judges. Okay, so now, Janet was talking about polling, and one of the things we have to keep in mind here, let's just talk about a basic set of numbers in regard to midterm elections in general. It's common wisdom that in a midterm election, after the White House shifts hands as far as what party the president is, and that, of course, has just happened, that the president's party loses seats in the midterm election. However, you have to understand something. A, this is not always true. And B, when it is true, Republicans do much better than Democrats. This is just historically and statistically, they do. The average of the, let me see where I have these numbers here. The average of the number of seats that Democrats lose in the first midterm of a Democrat presidency in the White House is about 32 seats, whereas the Republican average is only 11 seats. Now, to take over the House, this time the Democrats have to pick up a net of 23 or 24 seats. And there are quite a few competitive seats in the House. But the point is that when you hear statistics of, the president's party tends to lose seats in the midterms, well, take that with a little grain of salt, because especially if people start quoting averages and numbers, they're conflating the Democrat losses, which are much bigger on the average, with the Republican losses, which are much smaller. So this year is under the Republican set of statistics. So you have to break that down in other words, based on the averages of how many seats a party loses, how many seats the Republican Party loses in their midterms, it's not enough for the Democrats to take over control of the House. So the fact of the matter is that there's also the generic ballot, something called the generic ballot. And I just saw Rasmussen came out with a generic ballot, 44-44. Exactly even. The generic ballot is the basic question: will you tend to more likely vote Republican or Democrat? And the fact of the matter is, when you look at sources like RealClearPolitics.com, I want to recommend that to you as a good source for following these electoral things. RealClearPolitics.com, and also CookPolitical.com if you want to really get into deeper detail. That's by a subscription, very modest rate. CookPolitical.com. You'll be able to see all the analyses and opinion pieces as well as analyses and statistics. And you'll see something called the generic ballot. Now, interestingly, when you're asked the general question, are you more likely to vote Democrat or are you more likely to vote Republican, the Democrats do better in the numbers, the way the numbers pan out on the generic ballot. So much so that it's very interesting to consider this fact, and it's important to keep in mind. If Democrats in the generic ballot have anything less than a +8, then it's basically a toss-up. In other words, D +8 doesn't mean they're 8 points ahead. It simply means that it tends to shift in their favor when you ask that generic question prior to an election. The reality comes out much differently. So if it's less than D +8, which of course right now it is, that's basically, again, what we're seeing in a number of indicators is that it's pretty even. Okay, so a lot of hard work has to be done, and in order to do it, we're going to give you a few more resources and tools. And Janet, I think I'm going to have you, after I make another appeal here, have you talk to our friends joining us tonight about another big tool that we have for them, which is the party comparison piece. Then I'm going to give another few perspectives, and then we're going to take some questions that are coming in. But Janet, the party comparison piece, before we have you talk about this, let me again, for brothers and sisters, appeal to you. We are focused on this election right now, and Priests for Life is a very, very large organization, a very large team. We have them traveling and speaking all over the country, but we rely only on people like you to keep all this activity going, all the broadcasting, all the traveling, all the literature and materials, everything we do. There's no big funding source for us like Planned Parenthood has. There's no government grants coming for us. There's no money coming in from the church, the Vatican, or the dioceses or anything. It's you. It's the $25 donor. It's the $10 donor. It's the person who gives a $100 gift. Some of you would give great bigger gifts. But it's you. It's all you that enable us to do what we do. If you go to prolifedonation.org tonight, and the link is on that event page, prolifedonation.org, you can help us win these elections. And we're going to do it in a very, very smart way with a lot of great resources. Somebody was asking about the link to the page that we were just looking at for the courts, elections change courts. Okay, so politicalresponsibility.com/elections change courts. Politicalresponsibility.com /elections change courts. Now, actually, then if you're on the event page for this webcast, you'll see it as one of the main links. But we'll put it also right there on the main page. Remember, we told you prolifevote.com. Well, we're going to be every day. We're revising that and adding to it, and we're going to put it right there, front and center. So the key place to remember, and it's very easy to remember, is prolifevote.com. And you'll be able to get all these resources there, especially as you see the revisions in the coming days. Okay, so Janet, the party comparison piece. Let's tell our participants about that.
Yes, well, every 4 years when both parties have their conventions, prior to the main convention you see on TV, they have a party platform meetings where they revise their party platform. So every 4 years they come out with new wording. And of course the Democrats have gotten so far to the left in their stance on abortion, it's terrible. And so what we've done is we've produced this piece that quotes exactly, word for word. All that we did was a copy and paste from the party comparison from their party platforms on at least 12 issues. And that's what makes it, by the way, 501c3 friendly, because we're not just showing you on the abortion issue where the two parties stand, but we have a whole bunch of other issues. And when you see the extreme language that the Democrats are using. And, of course, the Republicans are definitely a pro-life platform there. And so what's great about this piece is, because if you're a rabid pro-abort, this piece will serve you, because you'll show your people how the Democratic candidates are just so, look at our party, we're just so for pro-woman, pro-abortion, hooray. And, if you're pro-life, then you'll be able to show the Republican side to say, look, they're conservative, they respect religious freedom, and all the things that are near and dear to our hearts. So this really works well, especially to reach those people who, my grandfather voted Democrat, I'm going to vote Democrat, but the grandfather's Democrat Party is not what it is today. And so this piece is quite successful. We have a legal letter that goes with it, Father, which you can explain more, that shows why it's okay to be distributed in churches, in any nonprofit arena. And again, if you can't get permission from your church to distribute it, then you distribute it with the people you come into contact. Your prayer group, your friends, use your Christmas card list, and get it out to everyone and let them see how extreme the Democratic Party has become.
This cuts across all elections. And you remember, Janet, we were giving this out recently at a big Christian music festival, and we were privileged to speak to the whole crowd, and we told them where they could go to our table to find this. And I remember one woman came up to me, and she said, "Oh, Father," she said, "I want to get that party comparison piece that you talked about. Now, remind me, which is the party that's the more liberal party?" And she asked that question. So don't presume that the people in your circle of influence know at all the differences between the positions and the platforms that the different parties take. Again, it can be distributed by churches because it's neutral. It's neutral. It doesn't express a preference for one or another issue or position. It simply quotes verbatim from the party platforms of the two parties, and it helps people across a wide spectrum of elections. It's also available in Spanish. Again, now the website, let's give you the website for this. Again, all of these things, prolifevote.com is your main place. But this one, to go directly to get this piece, votinginfo.net. Votinginfo.net is where you will go, and when you go there, you will see you'll have the opportunity to download this in English or Spanish, or to click to simply order it. We'll send you hundreds or thousands of copies, and you'll be able to download the legal letter that goes with it as well. Votinginfo.net is where you go for this. Janet, it's our most popular election resource, isn't it?
Absolutely, because of the way, it like I said, it goes into all these issues, and it just shows how extreme the Democratic Party has become.
There are a number of questions that have been coming in, and we really appreciate these questions. Someone was asking about, will we put the polling numbers that we mentioned, because they're very helpful, up on our website? Absolutely. Like I mentioned, now that we're in this home stretch of the election, the dynamics of the races will be shifting each day, and new developments will happen and so forth, and we'll be keeping that page updated. And yes, that is one of the things we'll put up there, the various things we're saying to you now with these polls and these statistics, so that you can help them, help your fellow citizens as you are talking to them. Here we have an excellent question that came in about bulletin inserts. And I'll tell you where you can get these. But one of our listeners wrote, "I write pro-life bulletin blurbs often for our church. What succinct messages will begin to impact our pro-choice parishioners?" Well, if it's a bulletin insert for the church, the words of the bishop's document, Living the Gospel of Life, can be impactful for a sincere practicing Catholic who's going to church and reading the bulletin. It may be good to have, first of all, the words from that document, because it shows really what our church says about voting and voting responsibility. Now, we have taken succinct quotes from that document, and we've chosen them for you and put them on, again, the prolifevote.com website. So if you go to that page again, you have to scroll down, past my introductory message and so forth, and continue scrolling down. There's a lot of different links, but then eventually you will see down at towards the bottom of the page, where there's various different boxes and sections of information. One of those is resources for the parish. Resources for the parish. So prolifevote.com. Scroll all the way down. Look at the different boxes that are there. And one of them is resources for the parish. And there, one of the things you find, it says bulletin inserts. Bulletin inserts on political responsibility in English and in Spanish. So what you'll be able to do is just grab what you'd like to use. If any of you have, as this person who wrote in says she has, the opportunity to occasionally put things in your parish bulletin, these are the resources that you can use. What you can also do in the by putting in the parish bulletin these information, put a link to the resources that we're showing you. So you can say something very simple like, pray for our nation as we elect our leaders. Go to electionprayer.com. That's one simple thing. Pray for our nation as we elect our leaders. Go to electionprayer.com. You can ask them to take this comparison piece, again, votinginfo.net. But you know what? The question was also asking, what can in particular impact our pro-choice fellow citizens? And that, brothers and sisters, is another theme that is key to this election, and I'm going to give you an insight into that right now. It is late-term abortion. In other words, you want to impact voters in your parish who are, maybe they're on the fence, or they're not sure, or they tend to vote pro-choice. Ask them about late-term abortion. And put some of the quotes in there that also we provide in another portion of our webpage, which I'll give you the address of. We provide the quotes from the abortion industry itself, and also we provide the quotes from the undercover phone calls that we have made. Now, let me give a little commercial here. The day after tomorrow, we're going to do another broadcast here at 9 o'clock where we're going to play those undercover phone calls. Now, some of you have heard them before. We're going to play them, and we'll be happy to send you the transcripts for them, and we'll show you where to find them on our website. what these calls show is abortions being done in our country throughout pregnancy on healthy mothers carrying healthy babies. Even at 30 and 32 weeks into the pregnancy, you can hear them on the phone making the appointment for our caller who called in and posed as a woman wanting an abortion at that time. And they said, yes, come on in next week. 30 and 32 weeks. I emphasize again, healthy baby, healthy mother. Most people who call themselves pro-choice would never say that that's okay. They say, well, if there's going to be a choice, let it be earlier on in the pregnancy, not in the 6th, 7th, 8th month. And this is an issue that divides the Republicans and Democrats, and this is an issue on which you can challenge the candidate. Challenge the candidate who's asking for your vote. Do you or do you not believe in protecting babies in the latest months of the pregnancy? That's where you challenge them. Because a lot of them, and guess what letter they have after their name, okay, the D, they're not going to be willing to protect those babies. Because they've already voted on this. This was a vote in this last Congress on the Pain-Capable Bill. Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, protecting babies at 20 weeks and beyond in the pregnancy. And the Democrats, with exceptions that you can count on one hand, voted against it. So you've got these candidates who are now, especially the Democratic candidates for the Senate, who are in red states. States that went for the president, and now these Democratic senators who are so opposed to the president in many ways, going to the very same people, asking them to vote for them, they're in a dilemma, aren't they? And the more anti-Trump they appear to be, the less their chances of re-election. And one of the ways that one of the things that deeply divides them from their Republican counterparts and from President Trump, and for that matter from the majority of voters, is their position on late-term abortion. The 10 states, by the way, where these, again, the states went for President Trump, but but there are now Democratic senators in those states up for re-election. The state where I live in Florida, okay, Pennsylvania and Ohio, West Virginia, Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin and Michigan, and North Dakota and Montana. These 10 states are particularly important, and 5 of them are actually in the toss-up category: Indiana and Missouri, and North Dakota and Florida and West Virginia. And these are races where, again, on this point here that I'm making right now, there's a lot of leverage for showing the difference between that candidate and the president. So at prolifevote.com, we're going to put up a lot more information for you about this. Wednesday night, tune in at 9 o'clock, and we'll let you hear those undercover phone calls. And then you can also, and we're going to put all sorts of links at Pro-Life Vote. That's going to be your go-to page, okay? Prolifevote.com. We're going to bring you all these things. And Janet, I think this is going to be, if people take these things and run with them and really spread them, we're going to make a lot of progress. Because people are, they're astonished when they hear these things. We are going to have, as the next point here that I want to bring to your attention, a very, very helpful resource at prolifevote.com. And that is the calendar. We need you to pay attention to certain dates that are coming up so that you can help mobilize your fellow citizens to do what has to be done. The primaries are finishing in the next couple of days. Rhode Island is among the last states to have their primaries. And then we get into the season of early voting very, very soon. Early voting is going to begin. And also the voter registration deadlines. So I want to focus on these two things for a moment and show you where to find these dates. If you go to prolifevote.com, again, towards the top of the page, you're going to see a link that says, Elections 2018, what's happening next in your state? Elections 2018, what's happening next in your state? And when you click there, you're going to see some links to some calendar dates. And these will be very, very helpful to us now moving forward. Primaries are finishing up, so that'll disappear. And then the next thing really is the voter registration deadlines and the early voting. So what happens next is an overall calendar that you can click, 2018 political calendar, and you see the next date on there is tomorrow. Tomorrow's the New Hampshire primary, and then the next day is the Rhode Island primary. And then September 21st, early voting actually begins. Now, early voting, this means no excuse early voting. In other words, I want to vote before Election Day, just to get it done, make sure nothing interferes with it. Maybe that day I'm sick or I forget or it's bad weather or I have a car trouble or whatever happens. Vote earlier. And this gives you an opportunity to mobilize other voters as well. The primary election, not primary, but the early voting is starting on September 21st. This is right around the corner. And then you'll see that's in Minnesota, South Dakota, Vermont, Wyoming. And then on September 27th, it begins in Illinois and North Dakota. October 6th, it begins in Maine. October 7th, then begin the voter registration deadlines. Now, this is very important, too. To get people mobilized to vote, they've got to be registered to vote. If we're gonna get them mobilized to vote, and then we're gonna send them to the polling place, and then they find out they're not registered, that's going to be terrible. We need to make sure that people are getting registered. And Janet, I'm going to have you speak in a minute about getting ways of getting people registered to vote. But one of the things here that you need to pay attention to are the deadlines, because starting on October 7th, various states start to close the doors. Say, if you're not registered by then, this is like a good month before the election. If you're not registered by then, you're not going to be able to vote, even if you get motivated in the meantime. October 9th, a lot of states close voter registration. Let me just read them here. Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Mississippi, Nevada, New Mexico, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, voter registration deadlines. So again, prolifevote.com, at the top, look at that calendar page and what happens next. And you'll be able to see a lot of helpful information. Mark it on your calendars and get out there and get other people registered to vote. Janet, you want to add some practical reflections and details on this?
Yes, well, first of all, let's not forget our young people. Anyone who will turn 18 by Election Day can be registered to vote now. So you should be paying attention to all the high school graduates that just graduated in June and some in May, and say, oh, are these young people registered to vote? Some of them are going off to college. Are they registered to vote? And then maybe they need an absentee ballot. So, for example, if a college student, this young person, lives like we do in Florida, but they're going to school in Maryland, well, Maryland is a very blue state. Their vote absentee up into voting up in Maryland is not going to help, but they could still vote in their home state in Florida via absentee. So these are very important things to pay attention to. And any high school graduate that you know that's going to turn 18, or someone who's even a senior in high school, if they're going to turn 18 before Election Day, then they can be registered to vote now. The other group of people that are extremely forgotten are our elderly, the people who are homebound, the people who are in nursing homes. Make sure they're properly registered and get them an absentee ballot and then bring it to them so they can vote and then mail it for them. My dad was in a nursing home for 7 years, never missed a primary, never missed an election, and actually his absentee ballot was mailed in and he passed away the day before Election Day, so his vote still counted. So I can't encourage you enough, and this is a great activity for Eucharistic ministers who do those communion calls. Ask those elderly people you're bringing the body of Christ to say, Are you registered to vote? Can I get you the form? Let me get you an absentee ballot. Let me sign you up to that. It really makes them feel more active and engaged if you get them involved in the election process.
Exactly. Janet, there's a great question here from Walter, and let me read it. It's an important question, and it can lead us into mentioning a couple of other resources like the Voting with a Clear Conscience and the 10 responses, which I ask you to talk about for a minute, and then I'm going to conclude by recommending an excellent book. But Walter says, do you think the USCCB faithful citizenship information would be effective, considering that their credibility is lacking due to the handling of the sexual abuse crisis? What other teaching tool would you recommend instead? Now, we have always promoted the document Living the Gospel of Life, which is actually a better teaching tool than the Faithful Citizenship document. And you'll find that on our Vote Pro-Life website, and you'll find even a study guide that we've made for that. And a lot of people, I think, are lifting out of these documents, the content, and not necessarily in the current climate, as you rightly point out, not necessarily talking about bishops, but rather just the ideas that are in the document. But Janet, might they not also find helpful? And again, we're going to put all these extra resources on prolifevote.com. Many of them are there already, but we're going to enrich that with even more tools. So again, your best teaching tool is going to simply be prolifevote.com. But Janet, let's talk about Voting with a Clear Conscience for a minute and the 10 responses brochure.
Well, Voting with a Clear Conscience is a great resource because, first of all, it starts off with a quote from the Catechism, which tells us why we have, as Catholics, a duty to vote. So this is directly from the Catechism. It doesn't matter what the bishops say or don't say. This is from our Catechism. And so that's a great starter to this brochure. The brochure goes through 10 points that Father Pavone has written about the party matters, knowing the candidates, how to get that information. This is a great, simple handout that you can have for your parish racks, or just order them yourselves and give them, like I said, with your Christmas card list. Go get a box of plain envelopes, get the party comparison, the Voting with a Clear Conscience, and then just write a short letter to your friends telling them how important this election is, and then mail it out. This could do more to drive more of the like-minded people to the polls than anything else. So I always tell people, if your parish is not going to let you do certain things, then you do it with the people that you come in contact with in your circle of influence. It's very doable.
Now, friends, I'm going to, taking this question as my cue, tell you about another resource that I was going to mention anyway, and I really cannot emphasize this frequently and forcefully enough. But then, once I mention this, let me also say, this is the beginning. You're taking part in this tonight, and we're so grateful that you are doing so. Is just the spark plug. It's just the beginning, because we need to now stay connected in these next 2 months before the election. We need to stay closely connected. And we're going to communicate with you if we have your email. We're going to communicate with you here on my Facebook page. We're going to communicate with you. There'll be another one of these webcasts on October 24th, but I'm going to be doing Facebook Live every single day. And so if you come here to my Facebook page, which is Father, all spelled out, Father Frank Pavone, you're going to get a wealth of information and guidance and inspiration from us here at Priests for Life. We're going to keep updating that website. So go to prolifevote.com and please spread it everywhere. We're going to put so many resources there. You're not going to even be able to look at them all. But let me recommend something that's really powerful. It's actually a movie and a book. Many of you know about it already. Dinesh D'Souza, whom I've been privileged to know over the years, been together with him a number of times. Dinesh D'Souza, it's called Death of a Nation. It's a book, and now it is a major motion picture. I saw it in the theaters just a couple of weeks ago, and it is at deathofanationmovie.com, and you'll get the information there of how it's going to be made available outside of the theaters. This, I believe, is the best tool given to us to prepare for this midterm election. Death of a Nation. The book, and the movie. Go to deathofanationmovie.com. I'm telling you, what he does is he traces the history of the Democratic Party, and he shows how the things they accuse the Republicans and the Trump administration of being, like racist and fascist and all these other kinds of things, actually belong to them. And he shows it in a very intellectually compelling way. It's absolutely incredible. The things that you will read in this book and see in that movie, please do yourself the favor of going to see that movie as soon as possible and getting this book and reading this book. Well, I'm telling you, friends, I'm excited. Like I said at the very outset of this hour, I'm appreciative of you. You are joining us here during this webcast, and I know that that is a sign of the fact that you're with us throughout this whole thing. We got to go over the finish line together. We have got to activate and mobilize and vocalize, shout from the rooftops, bring people in, be focused. Put this election at the very top of your priority list of activities between now and Election Day, November 6th. This is all the work of decades has to go into these next 2 months. Decades of work, decades of commitment, because it's going to affect what happens for decades. No exaggeration. So we're going to be back with you every day. Keep tuned in, and let's encourage one another. I am available to you, accessible to you, as is our whole team. We've got to go out there and get the job done. So now let me give you the Lord's blessing. And again, remember to say that election prayer every day from electionprayer.com. And please, once again, I appeal to you, give us a little donation. We're gonna use every penny to get pro-life causes advanced in this election, and prolifedonation.org is where you can do it. So now may the Lord bless you and your families. May he lift up and bless all your intentions and your efforts to serve his kingdom. And may he bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thanks very much, Janet and Krista and friends, all of you, each and every one of you is joining us. I really appreciate it. We will talk to you again soon. This is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life.